Welcome back to Phantom Whispers. Have you ever heard someone call your name when you're alone? That moment when you're certain you heard your name, clear as day, but when you look around, there's no one there. In many Asian cultures, this isn't something to ignore. It's a warning sign, particularly at night, particularly when the voice comes from outside your home, from the darkness beyond your door. In rural Thailand, children are taught a specific rule. If you hear your name being called at night, don't answer. Don't respond. Don't even acknowledge that you heard it. Because in Thai folklore, there are spirits that can mimic the voices of people you know. Your parents, your siblings, your friends. These spirits are called Phi Pob, and they're waiting for one thing: your response. The belief is that when you answer, when you acknowledge the voice, you give the spirit permission. Permission to enter your space. Permission to attach itself to you. And in some cases, permission to possess your body. Tonight, I'm sharing the story of a young woman named Niran who learned this lesson the hard way. In 2018, she moved to a small village in Lampang province to work as a teacher. She'd grown up in Bangkok in a modern apartment, disconnected from the old rural traditions. She'd heard the warnings about responding to voices at night, but she'd never taken them seriously until the night she answered and discovered that some voices in the darkness aren't calling you to help them. They're calling you to take something from you. Niran was 26 years old when she accepted the teaching position in Lampang. She'd wanted a change from the chaos of Bangkok, wanted to experience rural life, wanted to make a difference in a small community. The village school had been looking for a new English teacher, and Niran seemed like the perfect fit. The village was beautiful. Rice fields stretched in every direction, bordered by dense forest. The air was clean. The pace was slow. The people were welcoming. The school provided her with a small wooden house on the edge of the village, traditional Thai style, raised on stilts with a covered porch and wooden shutters on the windows. Niran loved it immediately. It was exactly the peaceful escape she'd been looking for. Her first few weeks were busy with lesson planning and getting to know her students. The villagers were kind but kept a certain distance, which Niran attributed to her being an outsider from Bangkok. She didn't mind. She was content with her quiet evenings, cooking simple meals, reading on her porch, listening to the sounds of the countryside. It was her 4th week in the village when something changed. Niran had stayed late at school, preparing materials for the next day's classes. By the time she walked home, it was past 9 o'clock. The village was dark and quiet. Most families went to bed early, rising with the sun to work in the fields. Niran reached her house and climbed the wooden stairs to her porch. She was fumbling with her keys when she heard it. Niran, her name, clear and distinct. A woman's voice coming from somewhere in the darkness beyond her porch. Niran looked up. Hello? Who's there? No response. Just the sound of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the night breeze. She felt a small flutter of unease, but dismissed it. Probably one of the villagers passing by. Maybe someone needed help. She unlocked her door, went inside, and thought nothing more of it. The next night, it happened again. Niran was washing dishes in her small kitchen when she heard the voice. Niran. Louder this time. More insistent. Coming from outside her kitchen window. She dried her hands and walked to the window. The shutters were closed, but she could hear the voice clearly. "Who is it?" she called out. Silence. Niran opened the shutters and looked out into the darkness. There was no one there, just the empty yard below her house and the rice fields beyond. She felt more unsettled now. It was strange. Why would someone call her name and then not respond? She closed the shutters and tried to focus on finishing her dishes, but the unease lingered. On the third night, Niran mentioned it to her neighbor, an elderly woman named Aunt Porn, who lived in the house closest to hers. They were hanging laundry together in the late afternoon, and Niran tried to make it sound casual. "Aunt Porn, has anyone been asking about me? Someone's been calling my name at night, but when I answer, no one's there." Aunt Porn's hands stopped moving. She stared at Niran with an expression that was hard to read. Fear? Concern? "You answered?" "Well, yes. I thought someone needed help." Aunt Porn set down the laundry and took Niran's hands in hers. "Listen to me carefully. If you hear your name called at night, especially from outside your house, do not answer. Do not respond. Do not acknowledge it." "Why? What is it?" "There are spirits in the forest, old spirits. They can mimic voices. They call your name to trick you into responding. Once you answer, you give them power over you." Niran wanted to laugh it off. She'd heard these kinds of superstitions before, but Aunt Porn's expression was deadly serious. "What happens if you answer?" Niran asked. "It depends on the spirit. Some will just follow you. Some will attach themselves to you. And some," Aunt Porn paused, "some will try to possess you, to take over your body. We call them Phi Pob." Niran felt a chill despite the warm afternoon air. "I've already answered twice." Aunt Porn's grip on her hands tightened. "Then you must be very careful. Do not answer again. If you hear your name tonight, ignore it completely. Pretend you hear nothing. The spirit will eventually give up if you don't feed it with your attention." That night, Niran tried to follow Aunt Porn's advice. She kept all her windows shuttered. She turned on every light in her small house. She played music to drown out any sounds from outside. But around midnight, she heard it again. "Niran." The voice was different this time. It sounded like her mother. The exact tone and inflection her mother used when she was worried about something. Niran's heart clenched. What if it really was her mother? What if something had happened and her mother had somehow traveled from Bangkok to find her? "Niran, please, I need help." That was her mother's voice. Niran was certain of it. She stood up from her bed and walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle when she remembered Aunt Porn's warning. Spirits can mimic voices. They call your name to trick you. But this was her mother. She was sure of it. "Niran, open the door. I'm scared out here alone." Niran's hand trembled on the door handle. Every instinct told her to open it, to help her mother. But something else, some deeper instinct, told her to stop. She pulled her hand away from the door. Instead, she walked to her phone and called her mother's number in Bangkok. Her mother answered on the second ring, her voice groggy with sleep. "Niran, it's midnight. What's wrong?" "Mom, are you in Bangkok? Are you home?" "Of course I'm home. Where else would I be?" "Niran, what's happening?" Relief flooded through her. "Nothing, Mom. I thought I heard something. Sorry for waking you." She hung up and stood in the middle of her small living room, her heart pounding. Outside, the voice continued. "Niran, please, open the door. It's cold out here." But it wasn't her mother. It had never been her mother. Niran followed Aunt Porn's advice. She didn't respond. She didn't acknowledge the voice. She went back to her bedroom, put in earplugs, and buried herself under her blankets. She didn't sleep that night, but she didn't answer. When morning came, she felt exhausted but relieved. She'd made it through. She'd resisted the temptation to respond. But at school that day, something was wrong. Niran felt strange, disconnected. She'd be teaching a lesson and suddenly lose her train of thought. She'd look at her students and not recognize them for a moment. Time seemed to skip. She'd be at the chalkboard and then suddenly at her desk with no memory of moving. One of her students, a girl named Ploy, approached her after class. "Teacher Niran, are you okay? You seem different today." "I'm fine, Ploy. Just tired." But Ploy looked worried. "Teacher, your eyes, they look strange." Niran went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Her eyes did look strange. The pupils were dilated, almost completely black, and there was something else, a hollowness to her expression that didn't feel like her own face. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to shake off the feeling. She just needed rest. She'd go home early, take a nap, and everything would be fine. But when she got home, Aunt Porn was waiting on her porch. "You answered, didn't you?" Aunt Porn said. It wasn't a question. "No, I didn't. I followed your advice." "But you considered it. You touched the door handle. You almost opened it." Niran stared at her. "How did you know that?" "Because I can see it on you. The spirit has attached itself. Not fully. You didn't give it complete permission by opening the door, but you gave it enough. You acknowledged it in your heart, even if you didn't speak." "What do I do?" Niran's voice was shaking now. Aunt Porn took her hand. "We need to see the village monk. Today. Right now." They went to the village temple, a small structure at the edge of the forest. The monk was an elderly man who listened carefully as Aunt Porn explained what had happened. He studied Niran's face, her eyes, and nodded slowly. "The Phi Pob has begun the attachment process," he said, "but it's not complete. We can still break the connection." The monk performed a cleansing ceremony that lasted 3 hours. He chanted prayers in Pali, sprinkled blessed water on Niran's head and hands, tied sacred thread around her wrists. He gave her an amulet to wear and specific instructions. She was to sleep with lights on for 7 nights, burn incense at her doorway, and most importantly, she was never to acknowledge any voices calling her name at night, no matter how familiar they sounded. "The spirit will try again," the monk warned. "It's tasted your energy. It knows your weakness, your love for your mother. It will use that against you. You must be strong." For the next week, Niran followed the monk's instructions exactly. Every night, she heard the voice. Sometimes it sounded like her mother, sometimes like her father. Once, it sounded like her younger brother, crying and begging for help. Each time, it took every ounce of willpower not to respond, not to open the door, not to even acknowledge that she heard it. The disconnected feeling gradually faded. Her eyes returned to normal. Time stopped skipping. By the end of the 7th night, she felt like herself again. The voice stopped calling after that. Whatever had been trying to attach itself to her had given up. Or perhaps the monk's ceremony had severed the connection completely. Niran never knew for certain. She stayed in the village for another year, completing her teaching contract, but she never forgot those nights. never forgot the sound of her mother's voice, calling from the darkness, begging her to open the door. And she never forgot the lesson she'd learned. Some voices in the night aren't what they seem. Some calls for help are traps, and the safest response to your name being called from the darkness is no response at all. When Niran finally returned to Bangkok, she brought the monk's amulet with her. She still wears it today, and she teaches her own children the same lesson Aunt Porn taught her. If you hear your name called at night, especially from outside your home, don't answer. Don't respond. Don't even acknowledge that you heard it, because some invitations aren't meant to be accepted, and some voices calling you in the darkness are calling you towards something you can never come back from. Niran's story is one that many people in rural Thailand would recognize. The belief in Phi Pob, spirits that can mimic voices and possess the living, is taken seriously in many villages. These aren't just old superstitions. They're warnings based on experiences passed down through generations. The key element in Niran's story is permission. The spirit couldn't fully attach to her because she didn't give it complete permission. She almost opened the door. She almost responded, but she stopped herself. That hesitation, that moment of doubt, was enough to prevent full possession. But even that small acknowledgement, touching the door handle, considering opening it, was enough to begin the attachment process. It's a reminder that these beliefs aren't about dramatic confrontations with evil entities. They're about subtle influences, gradual attachments, and the importance of maintaining boundaries between the living and the dead. What do you think happened to Niran? Was this a genuine encounter with a possessing spirit? Or was it a psychological experience? Exhaustion and isolation, creating symptoms that felt like supernatural influence? Let us know in the comments below. And if you've ever heard your name called when no one was there, share your story. You're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe to Phantom Whispers for more true ghost stories from across Asia. And remember, if you hear your name called from the darkness, the safest answer is silence. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.